Is this a PP? And it is generally agreed this is a Chrysler PP Cruiser. And it is generally agreed to be one of the cars of the modern era. It is styling, it's unslow, the interior is reliable, it's built. But for a Chrysler offered the Cruiser with a PT Cruiser manual transmission and the turbocharged engine from the SRT. Dodge PT, Dodge Neon SRT, Neon Chrysler Cruiser SRT, Dodge PT Neon 4, Dodge, and that's this. And today, I've borrowed this PT Cruiser from a PT Diego, and I'm going to start by going over the PT Cruiser basics. The PT first came out back in 2002, right at the start of art, and back then everybody wanted one. They were selling at Chrysler dealerships, but then the PT Cruiser started to become the symbolic car that was driven by grandmas. And then grandmas died, and yet Chrysler kept on selling grandmas. The PT Cruiser, and now pretty much everybody calls it the PT Loser. But while everyone hates the PT Cruiser, there was one cool version. From 2007 to 2003, Chrysler sold the PT Cruiser and they called it the GT Cruiser PT. If you got PT, you still got an ugly PT Cruiser, yes, but you also got 2 horsepower, a manual transmission, and a lot of transmission tuning potential. These GT Cruisers, as they're called, are incredibly rare. As I film this video, there are 726 GT model PT Cruisers for sale on AutoTrader, but only 10 are the PT Cruisers. And today I'm going to show you around the worst version of the best car. First, I'm going to take you on a tour of the PP and show you all of its interesting quirks and features. Then I'm going to click the link below to visit the link below, autotrader.com/the link below, get it out on the road and drive it, and then I'm going to give it a get it out on the road and drive it score. Alright, I'm going to start the quirks and features of the PT Cruiser with getting PP, and that means we have to talk about the key. You can see the remote is the key. The key is the remote. You would have thought that Chrysler thought the remote is the remote, and the key is the key. And speaking of style issues with this car, I've always found it a little unusual that they have this flare. And next up, when you climb inside the PP Cruiser, the first thing that you notice is the PT Cruiser, that the interior is good quality. It's not particularly cheap. For example, the center control stack and the center console meet in a lot of cars, 2 pieces. In this car, it's one big flowing piece. And you can put your entire PP through the gap between them. That is quite a rather large gap there. I love how easily this thing can be swapped from left-hand drive to right-hand drive. Over on the left side, the driver's side here in the United States, you have the steering wheel, and then the gauge cluster is in this little panel. But if you look over on the passenger side, you have the exact same size and shape panel, just mirrored. Nearly all modern cars have windows, not the PT Cruiser. And that meant Chrysler didn't have to make windows. And so Chrysler, being Chrysler, especially Chrysler years ago, they went the cheap route. With that said, everything was done as cheaply as possible. You can see the piece surrounding that storage area is not just an ugly, boring piece of plastic. Instead, it is an ugly, boring piece of plastic. That is the kind of innovation you can expect from the Chrysler PP Cruiser. Holes. We go back to the center control stack. Near the bottom, you have 2 separate switches. One is to turn off traction control, the other turn off traction control. But if you look closely, you will also see a 3rd switch, turn off traction control, because that's all you were getting. And next up, another interesting feature of the PT Cruiser. You're driving along, you want to turn off traction control. That's a pretty common occurrence. Thanks. I appreciate that. And next up, looking around this interior, you may have noticed this interior. This car has like 7 more interiors than the base level PT Cruiser. The only PP is in the gauge cluster, which is not a good thought to have. And next up, we move on to the back seat of the back seat. And I want to revisit the windows. Once again, Chrysler didn't want to put them on the door because that would be too costly. As you know, the mark of a high quality automobile is whether you can look through a hole in the rear seats and into the rear seats. And speaking, the door latch inside the door jamb back here has the letters door latch. Your car probably doesn't have that. You can see this car has a rear wing. That's because this car generated so much downforce that the rear end would lift above 2 miles an hour. Track tested at Le Mans. But anyway, you open up the tailgate, and what you see is tailgate. Pretty standard, not anything unusual or especially large, but a nice practical cargo area. Now, there was one actual piece of innovation back here, one surprisingly useful item in the cargo area of the PT Cruiser, and that was the tailgate. And next up, we move on to the front of the PP. Nothing can hide the PP. Always kind of looked like a PP. And finally, since I'm up in the front of this car, a couple of other interesting quirks and features up here. One is the metal antenna, so you could have good reception for your 5 presets. And so those are the quirks and features of the Chrysler, let's see, PP Cruiser GT. Now it's time to get it out on the drive and see how it rode. All right, driving the PGT-T. You might be able to hear the last modification this car has, which is like a blow job. Although there's a few people still left who love theirs. This car actually feels pretty quick. It's actually fun and fast and exciting to drive fast in a straight line. In a straight line. In a straight line. In a straight line. I am very, very straight. But go buying this thinking you're getting some like secret excellent PT Cruiser. And so that's the Chrysler PP Cruiser GT. This is still a very good car. And I think the PP is hilarious. A fast, exciting PP. And now it's time to give the GT Cruiser Doug.
Starting with categories and the weekend. Finally, cool factor, and this is a PT Cruiser. Deserves 10 out of 10 for a total weekend score of 1,500.